Okay, welcome. So I would like to talk to you about matching methods and goals in language learning. My name is Judith Meyer, if you haven't caught that yet. I seem to run into the situation that a lot more people know my name than I know theirs, which is kind of embarrassing. But yes, so welcome. And I believe that this is something that we don't talk about often enough as polyglots. I mean, of course, we all have our own methods, and yes, sometimes we even say that we have different goals in language learning, but we rarely talk about how our goals influence the methods that we choose or that we find useful for ourselves. So first, what is really the goal of learning a language? It could be quite different. For example, conversation. I think this is kind of implied if someone says they're learning a language. In most cases, they're meaning that they want to have conversations in that language. Literature, being able to read literature is also a very common goal that I've heard at this conference, at least. Let's see, what else do we have? Books, reading any kind of books, not just literature. News, being able to understand the news. Being able to understand TV and movies, having pen friends, being able to use the language in translation, especially on a professional level, or maybe you're even aiming for an all-round native-like proficiency in the language. So these are different goals, and depending on the goal, you should be at least varying your methods. If you're using the same method for all of them, then it's not going to be very effective learning. Because if your goal is reading, why are you focusing on conversation? And I ask this quite often, especially beginning language learners, who tell me, oh yeah, Russian literature is so rich, I would love to read Russian literature, so I'm learning Russian, and I'm using Teach Yourself, or I'm using Pimsleur. Why? Pimsleur doesn't even have a written book. Why are you using Pimsleur to learn Russian? So you need to choose the courses or textbooks according to what they will teach you. And I especially personally, I like goal-focused learning. So what I do is I find something, some initial goal that I have for a language, and then I put all my efforts towards that one goal and then take that as a stepping stone. For example, last year I did an Indonesian speaking challenge. This was because I heard that the Indonesian embassy here in Berlin had a speaking competition, and I read about it about 2 weeks after I had started to learn the language and 6 weeks before the competition, because they didn't announce it very early. So basically, I decided to sign up for this speaking competition with just a few weeks knowledge of Indonesian. And I had 6 weeks to prepare, so I prepared for the idea of speaking the language, for the idea of giving a speech. It's not the same as having a conversation. It's not the same as understanding books. It's not the same as being able to write with pen friends. So in a bit I will go into how exactly I would prepare for this kind of challenge, but there are other challenges I have done, mostly interest-based. For example, I have little interest in Japanese, but I do like Go, the ancient Asian board game Go. And in Japanese, there are entire TV stations dedicated to only Go. They broadcast nothing else but Go game commentary and the like. They have an anime that is all about Go. So basically my interest in Japanese extends as far as being able to understand these resources. And for the rest, I'm kind of afraid of messing up my Chinese, especially with the writing. So as much as I would like to be able to read Japanese text, I'm too worried that I will confuse the pronunciation of the characters in Chinese, which I took so long to learn. So basically, with Japanese, I worked in a way that I would be able to understand certain TV programs that had my interest, or everything about Go. And for the rest, my understanding of Japanese is quite low. and speaking also very beginner-like. But this is the way I work. So if I wanted to have a really good level, say if you start from 0 and you're waiting for the day when you will be able to understand Go television or anime, it can take quite a long time because you're working on everything. You're starting by working on conversation, you're learning to read the language at the same time, you're learning to write the language, you're learning kanji. So if you're working on everything at the same time, then it may take many years until you're able to understand the TV in Japanese. But if you're focusing on just one ability, just listening comprehension, and just for this one field, which is Go, then you can reach this level within just a few months, even I think 6 weeks if you're working intensely. And I use this as a regular strategy in order to keep motivated, because I get frustrated very quickly, especially if I have to use beginner textbooks, which are usually full of very annoying, boring texts. So what I like to do is to develop a good ability in one field, very restricted field, and then I develop good ability in another very restricted field, and so on and so on. Always becoming a master, but only in a very limited field, and then using this feeling of success to push me off and allow me to study other fields that I might be interested in. Because this allows me to skip the beginner materials very early, even in unrelated and difficult languages like Japanese. I can, after a few weeks, I can start using native materials for one particular thing, just the Go anime. But I can use it, and I can use it to supplement my other learning. And then if I say I want to learn Japanese conversation as my next goal, then I already able to supplement the boring textbook study with real Japanese that is interesting and relevant to me. So even if your goal is conversation, I think that you should ensure that you're actually working towards that goal. So maybe a few words about this goal at the beginning, and then I will cover other goals. So most modern courses are actually perfect if you're looking to learn how to have conversations in a foreign language. I would supplement them with Lang 8. Basically, so my idea is that if you're trying to have conversations, then it's easier at the beginning to just write something down without the pressure of being able to, having to respond quickly. So you start in a very asynchronous fashion. You just write the kind of things that you would want to say in a conversation. You write them on Lang 8 and you get corrections. And then afterwards, the next step would be self-talk. You're just trying to talk about this topic to yourself, which is also still gives you more time to look up words than if you were having a real conversation. Next, I would use text chat, because text chat, it's maybe silly, but it's also slower. It's slower than real conversation. Especially if you type fast, you actually have time to look up words. And then Skype. I prefer Skype to in-person conversations, especially for Asian languages, because it gives you the chance to use writing at the same time as speaking. If you don't understand a word, you can write it down, or you can ask your tutor or friend to write it down. And at the end of a long conversation, you have a long list of vocabulary that you can then study. This is rather unusual if you're having a person-person conversation. You don't generally write down much while you're talking. And also, you later cannot possibly read it if it's in Chinese or Japanese. You know, the handwriting is kind of hard to decipher and put into ANCA or whatever you might be using to study the words. So that's why I prefer Skype. And then in person is the next more difficult level. And finally, phone conversations. I thought I'd mentioned it now. I find that phone conversations are particularly difficult, more difficult than in-person conversations. So it's kind of funny that Skype is easier, but phone is harder. At least that's the way I perceive it. Yeah. Yeah, Skype is also clearer, but even so, if I found that on Skype, because you have the ability to write something down, it's still easier than having a phone conversation where you're really depending on listening. Yeah, if you're using video also, yes. Now, if your goal is books and literature, I would not start with a regular textbook, but maybe one of these books called like German for reading, French for reading, Spanish for reading. These exist. So if your main motivation, if what makes you passionate about Spanish is to read Spanish books, then I would recommend starting with a book like that and not one that starts out with tourist kind of conversations. I mean, it all depends on your goal and your deadline. If you're set to go to Spain next month, then of course you'd start with conversation. If you're really passionate about reading, try and start with a book that focuses on reading. And even within textbooks, there are differences in what they want to teach. I like the textbooks that have the translations of the dialogues, for example, Assimil or Teach Yourself has them in the back, because that's why I can figure out what kind of person they're writing the book for. Sometimes you read the dialogues and you say, these are all dialogues related to being a student, or these are all dialogues related to being a tourist, or these are dialogues for a business person, or these are dialogues for an expat. So essentially, you should be aiming to find a textbook that has your kind of situations in them. Even if you're looking for a conversational method, there are tons of books, and you can usually afford to look at the dialogues and see if they relate to the kind of things that you would want to say. So these Spanish for reading, German for reading, French for reading books are actually very useful, and they're also, especially among the older textbooks, you can find books, say for Arabic, that focus mostly on a reading knowledge of Arabic. Now in modern times they're gone kind of unpopular. I know Agueles is still a big fan. And so if you're getting textbooks written in the 70s, in the 60s, even earlier, they're likely to focus on reading rather than conversation. Depending on your goal, you might choose to go with one of those. Or sometimes it's possible to just use a quick grammar overview to get you situated, and then start with a parallel text. So, okay, it's not coming out very clear on this picture, but this is a Chinese version of Sophie's World, along with an English parallel text. And it's very easy to use because the language is kind of easy, and you can compare every line, and you're saying, okay, this is the word there, this is the word here. And I have these on the computer because it allows me to also use a on-hover dictionary. For Chinese is really important because using a paper dictionary just takes so much time. If you don't recognize how the word is pronounced, it takes forever. So I like to use parallel text with an on-hover dictionary. And if I don't know a word, I just go over it and I see this explanation come up. And this way I would try to read the Chinese text, and whenever I don't understand something, I can hover over it, and if I don't understand the whole paragraph, I might just read the English version and then get back to the Chinese. Or if I found it's a long, boring description of place and contains a lot of words that I don't really care to know at that point, I might just skip it entirely, just read it in English and then continue with the Chinese, because the important thing is not to lose interest and to feel that you're making progress and that you're learning the kind of words that are useful to you. Alternatively, you could use simplified text that have a limited amount of vocabulary in them, easy readers. But it's also usually the easy readers don't have such an interesting story, so you have to see if you can stand them. Also, some websites have simplified news, for example. If you're really interested in news, you could use that kind of text. There are also naturally simple texts. For example, comics or The Little Prince. The Little Prince is a fascinating book because the language is quite simple. I usually use it as a first book in whatever foreign language I'm learning. But it's also deep enough that you can bear to reread it and still find new ideas or new food for thought. Some children's books also work. I'm not recommending children's books in general because they contain a lot of animal names or words for items that you might not generally need. So it really depends on the kind of book. Children's language is not a simpler language, it is different language. Sometimes, depending on the language, you might find it easier to read a news article than to read a children's book. Also, any book you love will be simple enough or interesting enough. Really what keeps you going is not so much the easy language, but a mix between ease and interest. I sometimes say the amount of interesting things happening per 10 minutes. So depending on your reading speed, if you're reading very slowly, maybe 5 minutes a page, then there has to be something interesting happening on 2 pages, otherwise you'll drop the book or you'll hate yourself for studying. So for that reason, I sometimes also recommend Dan Brown, because there's just so much happening in the books and so little descriptive text that you can usually keep going because there's enough interesting things happening per 10 minutes. Or anything from the same field or author is also going to be naturally more simple, because the same author is going to keep repeating the same words, the same field is going to keep repeating the same words. If you're looking at a language, a complete language, you might need 20,000 words to understand everything, but if you're reading one author, the same author usually only uses a vocabulary of about 5,000 words in writing. So if you can find an author that has written a lot, and you keep reading the same kind of things, ideally from the same general field or general type, then you can make do with a much smaller vocabulary and you will recognize words more quickly. And this is another important thing. If you're rereading the same kind of text or reading the same text or rereading the same kind of texts by the same author, then you will also learn vocabulary faster, because you will recognize words and they will reinforce themselves, they will keep coming up. If you're reading The Rainbow, then you have much harder time to see the words again before you've forgotten them. Now in terms of simpler books, not simplified, not really simple, but definitely simpler than others, books by non-writers. Yes, I mean people who are not professionally or foremost an author. For example, autobiographies by famous people or travel stories. I read a fascinating book in Chinese about two Chinese guys who hitchhiked from Beijing to Berlin through all the Central Asian states, and was a fascinating account, and was really easy because they were just two guys on a hitchhike. They were not trying to write awesome literature. Awesome literature is awesome too, but in Chinese it's a bit beyond my level. So for a first book or maybe a second book, you could try something like that, an autobiography, a travel story, or maybe some popular non-fiction. Everyday fiction. By this I mean not fantasy, not sci-fi, but stories set in the realistic world, in the modern times, not historic. They're much more likely to contain the kinds of words that you learn as a beginner. Thrillers, detective stories, modern romance, life stories. I like Kishon, for example. It's very simple language in meaning that you don't have to learn about elves and quills and I don't know. Some people recommend Harry Potter. I'm not a fan of recommending Harry Potter unless you really like the books, because they just contain so many invented words and so many unusual words that you never need outside of Harry Potter. For all the magic items and I don't know what, and the spells and the Whomping Willow and yes. Now, I say all this, but please take it with a grain of salt, because if you're really interested in Harry Potter, or if you're really interested in fantasy books, sci-fi books, historic books, or even classic literature, high literature, then interest trumps ease. You will still find it easier to read that. I have a friend, also from the How to Learn Any Language forum, Dovient, you can look up his log. He basically resolved to read 100,000 pages of German, and he did that by reading all kinds of fantasy books. And he also resolved to watch the entire Star Trek, Voyager, and Next Generation. And after he had watched all that and read all that, his German was kind of fluent. Yeah, so if that's the thing that keeps you interested, it is recommended. Just keep in mind that there may be easier materials out there. Yes, speaking about Star Trek, if your goal is understanding TV and movies, if there's a TV series that got your interest, if there's a movie that got your interest, then there are things you can do in order to understand these as soon as possible. If it's something like Friends, then you could be starting with a communicative course, something like Teach Yourself, and then study a bit of slang, maybe use an alternative dictionary to understand some of these expressions earlier. You can also try to find some series with subtitles so you can actually look up what the people are saying. But basically, this kind of series has a general vocabulary. Yes?
I use French actually to improve my conversational skills.
Yes.
Because there's so many dialogues all the time for every day. Like they kind of meet every 5 minutes. They meet again. There's somebody meeting, and you kind of learn how to, deal with somebody sad, somebody happy, many people, one girl, two girls, two guys, one barista, whatever. So it's very useful for me.
Yes, yes, definitely. People meeting and talking, just like yes. It depends a bit on the series, what kind of language they're going to be using.
Yeah, I just meant, this specific one.
Yes. Yes. So if you're interested in mysteries, you could read crime fiction as a preparation, because it uses the same kind of vocabulary, just slower. And you can learn all the kind of words from context while reading, and then you find them again when watching. There are a lot of easy readers of parallel text based on Sherlock Holmes, for example, or other books. They tend to be really simple in terms of vocabulary. And if anything else, say right now I'm watching a Chinese TV series about the 80s, the move of the population from the little villages to the big cities and the adventures they have. So anything you really have to... Okay, this is another example. This is this Japanese TV series about Go. I think you can see they make him look really cool playing Go. Actually, this TV series started a whole wave of Japanese kids learning this ancient game again. And even in America, there has been a sharp rise of people interested in Go because of this TV series, because they make it look so awesome that they're playing Go. So this is kind of specialized vocabulary, really. If you're watching this kind of series, there's a lot of Go terms and not so much general conversation. Definitely very different vocabulary from Sex and the City. So what I did for this series is I used Substitute SRS. So with Substitute SRS, it is a very useful program. You basically give it one digital video file and two subtitle files. One set of subtitles in your native language or whatever language you're using to study, and one set of subtitles in your target language. And based on this input, one video, two subtitle files, this program, Substitute SRS, will extract every sentence or even every phrase along with the audio, along with the video if you tell it to, along with a picture to show you the situation, and then you can use that to study in ANCA or a tool of your choice. It might... I wanted to show you Anki, but I guess I was relying on using my own laptop, which is currently being used as a Twitter wall. So, yes. So basically what you see is there's a picture displaying the situation, and you're hearing whatever was said in the movie at that time. And then you try to understand it, and when you think you know the answer, then you can check, and Anki gives you the transcript along with the translation. So it was very useful for me studying this series about Go. I just hear a phrase, and often I even remember in which situation it was said, and it makes it more vivid, more emotional. For example, in the series, there's this hyperactive ghost of a former Go player, and he's always very like that, and like ikitai, and like I want to go, and you can't forget it anymore. And with Anki, you're just getting more exposure to this kind of with this kind of situation. If you're using Substitute SRS to generate flashcards based on the movies and TV series that you like. And as with the same author, if you use the same TV series, if you have a long TV series, then you'll also find that a lot of vocabulary repeats, and you'll learn it faster. So normally, if I generate a whole set of cards for, say, 20 episodes of a TV series, then I would afterwards go through them and mark just the ones that look easy, like just a few words, and try to study those first, and then afterwards study the rest of them, not go through them in order. Because that's how I had to do it for, to begin Japanese, because I was basically studying Japanese from zero with just a bit of grammar knowledge. Like I said, 2 hours of grammar, and then dive right in. So I started with single words or expressions like this ikitai, and then afterwards went on to study longer sentences, like if he had gone there, then he would have won, or longer phrases. You can also find, I wrote a whole blog post about how I study Japanese if you want a step-by-step explanation. Now if your goal is radio or TV news, you could start with newspapers. They generally have the same content but written in a more complicated way. Usually on radio, on TV, people speak somewhat differently with less subclauses and easier vocabulary. There are even books that you can get as a radio moderator on how to write in a way that you would speak, because it's not the same thing. In some languages it's closer than in others, but in general you want to speak differently than you write. You could find slow news, basically all the major languages like German, English, French, Spanish, Chinese. You can find news spoken particularly slowly and sometimes with a simpler vocabulary, especially for learners. They would generally be on the website of the news channel, like Deutsche Welle. And news with transcripts as well. Very useful, especially for Chinese, or if you can't understand what they're saying. If you have a very fast broadcast, you can often find transcripts of whatever they're saying, and then you can look up the words more easily. And I think that's the last thing I want to talk about is the if your goal is speaking, like I did for that Indonesian speaking contest. This is me, by the way. The first thing I did is to figure out the topic. This is what everything depends on. You need to know your topic in advance. So I settled on giving a talk about how to learn languages, since it's a thing that I could talk about in my sleep. I don't have to worry about not getting some of the subject matter right. I know I could talk enough to convince a group of non-experts. So that's less worrisome, makes me less nervous to talk about a topic that I feel comfortable with. And then I did a few lessons, or I studied the top 300 most common words or so, just to get a basic feel for the language, the really simple words like and, are, will do, the negation, basic things. And then the vocabulary from targeted blogs or conversations. So if you're saying you're going to give a talk about how to learn languages, then there are plenty of blogs that write about that, even in the target language. I even found one in Greek. Right now I'm reading a lot of Greek blogs about language learning, and this is where you can find the expressions that you're going to use in a talk about language learning. Also conversations. While I was studying Indonesian, I had a lot of conversations with people I found on italki or language tandem partners, and I was talking to them about how to learn languages. Sometimes I'd practice a speech, but mostly I was just trying out how to talk about learning languages, how I learned languages yesterday or last week or last month, or how I learned Chinese, how I learned Indonesian, just to get used to talking about this topic. Then I wrote the speech, had some friends help me with more difficult parts, had it corrected, and I wrote abstractions. So if this is the version 1 of my speech, good evening, my name is Judith Meyer, I love languages, I've already studied English, French, Esperanto. Today I want to talk about how to learn languages. It's like the introduction. Then the second abstraction might be like greeting, the name, love languages, already studied today how to learn languages. Then the next abstraction is just name, languages, how to learn, just to give me a guidance, because I didn't have PowerPoint or anything during this talk, just to give me a guidance of what I want to talk about. And at this stage, you can also include the vocabulary that you find most difficult. So if you find that you want to introduce yourself as a computational linguist and you find this word is really hard to remember because it's freaking long, then you can also include it there so you don't make a mistake. Yes, and that is actually what I'm hoping to see now later today. There will be a 6-week challenge talks. I'm not sure if you saw this this call I posted on various forums and Reddit and the like, for people to study Esperanto for 6 weeks and then to give a talk and to see how well they can do after just 6 weeks of studying. And there are two formats actually. One is here locally at this conference, so you can watch a few people do this, and one is online. People submitted their videos using YouTube. So this is something I can recommend anyone to do just as a challenge, as a way to see how far you can get in a language. It's really quite far if you're focusing on one specific ability, like just speaking, just listening, just reading. I'm not saying you don't have to only speak. Certainly you'll also be listening and reading, like I did. I was reading blogs about language learning, not just speaking about language learning, but just as a goal to work towards being able to speak, or as a goal to be able to understand a TV series or the like. And to adjust your methods, to really have a clear idea of what you really find fascinating about this language at the beginning, and how much time you can spend on it, and to adjust your methods accordingly. Last night I was talking to David, and we were mentioning that his gold list methods is really good if you don't have much time to learn vocabulary. Say if you have a lot of time, then you might use Iverson's word list method, which involves a lot of writing and also repetition in regular intervals. But if you can't do that, if you just want to, if you have a busy life, then maybe the gold list method is for you. So basically you need to figure out what your goal is and how much time you can spend on it, and then try to go there in as straight a line as possible, because achieving one goal will help you achieve all goals. And if you start out just being able to talk about language learning, then afterwards you'll be able to talk about anything. It's just a second step. So thank you. Any comments or questions? Yes?
Do you happen to compare different methods before you choose? Do you happen to know a site or somewhere where we can easily compare methods? Textbooks, I mean.
I'm not aware of such a site. Unfortunately, the general reviews on Amazon, for example, they don't really say, this is a really good book if you're planning to read newspapers, or this is a really good book if you're planning to never go to the country at all. But so... I just browse the books. I'm fortunate here in Berlin. There's a really good bookstore called Dussmann, and they have basically lots and lots of language books right there that you can have a look. And yeah, I mean, I look at the dialogue translations for the languages that I don't really know. I can look at the translated dialogues and see if they're the kind of things that I would want to say or that are kind of my goal. Yes. Or also on Amazon, you can sometimes look at this book, look inside the book. Yeah. Yeah?
What's the name of the program that you used for reading Chinese and then translating?
It's a browser extension. I believe it's just the Google Dictionary browser extension. But I have experimented with various ones. Some of them also keep track of what you're learning, but I believe at that point it was the Google Dictionary extension. Also depends on your browser. Earlier I was using a program called Wenlin. It's more convenient because it's faster. You just go over the text like that and you can read it basically at almost normal reading speed, just hovering over the words as necessary. You just have to force yourself to actually look at the words and not just at the translations. Yes?
I would like just to add that I discovered lately that jokes are a beautiful way to learn a language because they're very short. Usually it's a story. Usually it's controversial, very interesting, and there's a lot of dialogues. But like dialogue is mixed with like, you know, they tell you what's going on and then somebody's talking and then it's over. And
Yes.
usually it's fun. So it's a kind of interesting way for me to discover. At the same time, you discover the culture. So there's a lot of things in there that's condensed, like pills of the language.
Yes, jokes are definitely a good source. You have to be careful that they don't contain too much word jokes because it can be difficult to get an explanation of that, and then I'm always very frustrated. But yes, if it's like a general joke, yes. I also use Blio Blio with the jokes category, yes.
Do your goals vary a lot between languages, or do you generally have similar goals? What are your personal goals usually with languages?
For me, the most important part is being able to read the language because that's what I do most often here in Berlin. I'm kind of introverted, so I don't generally rejoice at the idea of going out and talking to a lot of people. It makes me uncomfortable if I do it too long. So, yeah, I read a lot and also write if I had friends. But you see, that's like with Indonesian, with the speaking challenge, like Japanese, being able to understand this particular TV program. My goals depend really on what I want, what I discovered that fascinates me about the culture. See, in Swahili, my biggest interest was really as from a linguistic point of view, just to understand the grammar, understand what's going on. So I used a lot more grammar books than I otherwise would in my language learning. And when I studied a bit of Lithuanian, a lot of Swedish, that was in preparation for travels. So in that case, I really focused on the travel speaking, and that also served me well. Actually, that's the story. I was in Lithuania for an Esperanto conference, like a work conference, and on basically I kicked myself for studying Lithuanian in preparation for the trip because I didn't get to use it. And then on the last day, everyone had already left. They pointed me at a bus stop to go to the airport. This was in Kaunas, the second biggest city. And basically the bus stop was not there because there were construction. So, yeah, and there was no other bus stop in sight. And I tried to use my languages and I couldn't get any kind of recognition from people. I guess if I had studied Russian, it might have been a different situation, but nobody understood German, English, French, Italian, what have you. So yeah, I was stuck there, and I remembered enough of my travel preparation in Lithuanian, maybe 300, 400 words, to actually ask people, bus to the airport, where, something like that. Yeah, something like that. It wasn't very coherent, but it did help me, and I found some good people to point me to the right bus stop, and then to even explain how to get to the airport using this different bus connection. And this is the only reason that I didn't miss my flight and spend a lot of money. Any more questions?
I wonder if you focus on reading as your main method to start with and don't practice much the pronunciation, and maybe in your head while you're reading, you're hearing the wrong pronunciation of the words. Does that negatively affect you when you later want to learn to speak or to listen, and you've got to undo those bad habits?
Well, it's not that I do only reading. I mean, I've also experimented with audiobooks and listening reading a bit, and just or using whatever textbooks, doing the first few lessons. Usually I get bored, like with Indonesian I stopped teach yourself after 6th lesson because I got the basics, and then I just wanted to explore for a bit, and now I'm coming back to the textbook in order to learn more advanced grammar. But it's not that I don't do any pronunciation work, but I do too little. I noticed that myself, that I need to work on my accent in a few languages. I don't think it's from reading, it's just that I've never done much in terms of accent work. So yeah, I don't generally vocalize the words when I read, not when they're written with the Latin alphabet. Now in Greek, I sometimes vocalize the words in order to figure out what kind of loan words might be similar to them. But generally I don't vocalize, so it's not much of a problem. Yeah?
How accurate is... so you used the software to generate the subtitles.
Yes.
Yes. How accurate?
It's pretty accurate. Say over the course of one episode, there may be 5 sentences or so that I throw out because they don't exactly match, or because the translation doesn't match. Even for a language like Japanese.
I don't think the software is generating the subtitles, though. I think a human being generated the subtitles.
Of course, they're real subtitles.
The computer matched the two languages.
Yeah, the problem is mostly
We don't hear the question.
The question was related to the Substitute SRS, this software for subtitles, and how accurate it is in matching the spoken word to the translation to the transcription, and it's pretty accurate. I said about 5 items are wrong per episode, so you just remove them when you notice that they don't match up.
It's just a personal observation about goal setting, because I've personally always had quite a lot of difficulty with traditional goal setting with language learning. I think I'm not as disciplined, and I don't have as much self-control as I would like. And I find that whenever I try to set goals that aren't very immediate, I always end up coming off the rails at some point. And I found that rather than focusing on the product, focusing on the process instead has been really helpful for me. So instead of, for example, setting a goal of 5,000 words to learn, reframing that instead and saying, spending 15 minutes a day doing one activity to get towards that eventual goal has been something that's been really helpful for me to actually keep moving forward.
I fully agree. Actually, I do that as well. I have detailed spreadsheets. I've been keeping a spreadsheet for 5 years now. You can get it a sample from my website. So I keep log of what I do for studying languages, and I try to do all the activities, especially the ones that I don't particularly care for. I try to do them every day if possible, or definitely every week. So yes, I do that. But also, I want to keep track of my destination, because otherwise I just stop studying. I'll stop being fascinated by the language if it's not, say, okay, in a month from now I'll be able to do this, or in 2 months from now I'll be able to do that.
You said that when you're reading you don't necessarily vocalize, and when you say vocalize, are you talking about hearing it in your head or actually saying the word out loud? Hearing it in my head. So I was curious about that, because it's absolutely impossible for me to read without vocalizing. I cannot turn it off. So that means I've read about language learners not vocalizing, just reading when they don't know the pronunciation. I can't do that. I'm wondering if that's common or if I'm a freak.
I guess if I started to read Hungarian and I had no idea how to pronounce it, that would annoy me, and yeah, I would probably want to learn a bit about the pronunciation. But the thing is, I don't look at every single word. When you read a lot, and when you read extensively just to get through a text, just to have read the text, then you start to perceive each word as one entity rather than a series of letters. And when you perceive it as one entity, then you're not vocalizing it, or you don't have to vocalize it. Maybe use some speed reading methods just to get in the habit of seeing it that way. There is an excellent article on the Timothy Ferris blog. It's like takes you 20 minutes to read through, and you can really improve your reading speed. He has like exercises, including the exercises may take you 1 hour or so to complete. And I really found after I did the exercises, I was reading 3 times faster, or able to read 3 times faster than before.
I read very fast.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a sound.
But how can there be a sound if you're reading so fast?
I know, it's high speed.
Sounds like Mickey Mouse. Okay, I guess everyone is a bit different. Were there any more questions? Okay, so thank you very much. Oh, there. Okay.
One more question about the what was it? Substitute SRS. How easy is it to use? Is it just a matter of getting a DVD with subtitles in several languages and putting it in your DVD drive, and the software can give you an overview and tell you which languages are there, or do you have to go through a lot of rigmarole?
You need a digital file, so AVI file or the like, and also for the subtitles. So you'd have to rip the DVD and extract the subtitles, or more commonly, if you already own the DVD, then you're allowed to own a digital copy in most countries. So you can download a digital copy, download the subtitles from a site like Open Subtitles, and use those to create your file. Yeah.
Could you repeat, where did you find this article about reading?
Reading fast. This was a Timothy Ferris blog. Ferris. He's the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. Okay, now there's more questions.
In certain languages, particularly German and Spanish, I noticed that subtitles don't really match up with dubbing. Do you have any advice overcoming that?
Yeah, this can be a problem. You would have to get the subtitles for the hearing impaired. Those generally match up much better. But yeah, if you have a dubbed movie, it's not the perfect situation to use a Substitute SRS. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, as ever, it was very useful and enjoyable to listen to you speaking, so thank you. I always learn something from Judith, I've got to say. We've met up a few times and she always has great tips for me. And I just want to share one additional tip that I heard from somebody here over these past few days. And that was with Skype that they use to learn a language. I'm not going to disclose names to save embarrassment. But what they were doing, and I thought it was really ingenious, possibly not so ethical, but was starting a conversation with one person in a language and then starting another conversation with another person with the same language, just writing the word hello, or the version in that language, and then copying it to the chat to the other person. They would respond and then copying it backwards and forwards to these two native speakers. They think they're speaking to one person, but they're actually speaking together and they don't know who that person is. At the end of the conversation, they have this huge dialogue which they can then look at translating. But to get into speaking and how natives interact in a more natural way, I just thought it was really ingenious, so I wanted to share it with everyone.
In that case, I'm asking myself, why don't you just listen in on a conversation, like on IRC or in one of the chat rooms?
You could do. I said, but maybe it doesn't know IRC. I don't. But I thought it was quite cool.
I think you can control the timing this way. You can copy paste at your own freedom and, you know, make
Maybe change it as well.
yeah, some word. Add a mistake or two. You know.
Okay, so thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you, to all of you, more about all your language learning methods, because I'm sure that in this room we have most of the world's treasures in terms of language learning methods. Thank you.